Hi, I'm Pat Lefebvre with Bowsite.com. I'm here to review the new 2017 Mathews Halon 32 bow. If you guys are familiar with our reviews, we have one perspective and one perspective only when we do a review, and that is how well will this bow perform when we're 22 feet up in the tree, it's 18 degrees out, and the buck of a lifetime has just walked in. How is this bow going to perform when you're belly crawling across a ridge in Alaska and you're 30 yards above a trophy billy goat? That's the only perspective that I look at when I'm reviewing a bow or when I'm choosing a bow. And that's the only one we ever will look at. At the end of the day, the only thing I care about is how well this bow feels in my hands and how well I shoot it, and that's it. So when I'm choosing a bow, what I care about is very simple, and I look at 4 questions. First, does the bow feel good in your hands? Second, does the bow feel good after the shot? Third, does the bow improve your accuracy even if your form is less than perfect? And I will tell you that I'm in that camp. And fourth, and above all else, do you enjoy shooting the bow? That is absolutely vitally important. So I ask myself those 4 questions. So let's talk about the Halon 32. The Halon 32 is built with the same cross-centric cams as the 2016 Halon. However, the Halon 32 grew a little bit. It is now 32 inches axle to axle. One complaint I hear from some seasoned bow hunters is how today's bows keep getting shorter and shorter. These shorter bows create more knock pinch due to the sharp string angle. Mathews has obviously listened to that feedback, and I was happy that they made a 32-inch axle to axle bow, and they stretched out the Halon a little bit. You can put me in the same category as those guys that like a little bit longer bow and a little bit more brace height. The brace height options are the same as on the Halon 32 as they were on the original Halon. So you can get them in 5, 6, and 7 inches. For those of you that are partial to certain camo patterns, Mathews has added some new patterns to the mix. I'm a big fan of Sika's AFaid pattern, both an elevated 2 pattern, which is what I wear while I'm deer hunting, and the open country pattern, which is what I wear on western stalk hunts. They also added the Ridge Reaper Baron pattern along with Mathews' popular Lost Camo XD. As always, you can also get the bow in solid colors as well. This particular bow is, in fact, and if you could see, I am perfectly coordinated. I could be in Cosmo magazine with Melania Trump, and everything matches from head to toe in my Sika Elevated 2 AFaid pattern. So I feel good about this, and even though it makes absolutely this much difference when you pull back on a deer, if it makes you feel good, then it's all worth it, right? So some pretty good camo patterns added to the Mathews line this year. And while the bow grew a little taller, the weight has basically stayed the same. So it weighs in at 4.73 pounds for the Halon 6 and 7, and 4.83 pounds for the Mathews Halon 5. For you guys that are speed freaks, and I'm not one of them, but for those of you guys that are speed freaks and are worried that the slightly longer to axle killed the speed on the Halon, well, don't worry about that at all, because there is a decrease, but it's absolutely tiny decrease. So we're getting, on the IBO speeds, the Halon 5 is 350 feet per second. It is 342 feet per second on the Halon 6 and 335 feet per second on the Halon 7. Just like with last year's Halon, the Halon 32 uses the cross-centric cams for perfectly level knock travel, and that's important, and I've explained that before, that it absolutely helps with your accuracy, certainly with imperfect form like mine. So let's talk about performance. The bow shot fantastic, particularly with broadheads, and if you like the Halon, you'll love the Halon 32. I found a slight improvement in balance and hand shock due to the extra length of the bow, but it's always hard to judge these incremental improvements. So I love the Halon, and I found this bow to be just a tiny, maybe it's all in my mind and maybe I'm crazy, but I found this bow to be a little bit better on balance, a little bit more accurate, or I was more accurate with it, I should say. And everything else was the same. I also really like the fact that the 32 inches doesn't provide the severe string angle like the 30-inch one does. And that's nice for guys like me. Backwall and hand shock were outstanding and exactly as the previous model. I didn't find any difference there. Accuracy was fantastic again due to the level knock travel and the forgiveness of the bow. I received my bow just in time to take it on an annual Kansas deer hunt. I spent 10 days shooting it, and I was dead ringing everything with my broadheads out to 40 yards. So I was ready for whatever Kansas threw at me. What I didn't realize is that Kansas was going to throw my second biggest deer ever right in my lap on the second day of our hunt. A massive mid 170-inch non-typical gave me a perfect 22-yard shot. The draw was smooth, the back wall was hard as a rock, and the bow just became an extension of my predator instincts, and that's all I could ask for. The giant buck gave me a tricky shot, however, a hard quartering away angle that requires precise shot placement. But I was confident. I'd been shooting this Halon 32, and I knew the bow would perform, and it felt really good in my hands, and that's all I can ask for. My arrow hit just where I was aiming, and the second biggest buck of my life was now on the ground.
Congrats.
Hey, all right.
Congrats.
Oh,
awesome deer.
First deer with the Halon 32. Might be the first deer ever with a Halon 32. So in conclusion, this bow rocks. I love this bow. I like the fact that Mathews stretched it out. I love the new camo options. I like the fact that Mathews kept all the great features I love from the Halon and added just enough to make it a little bit better. But like every review we do, it's totally subjective, and I just want to be honest with all of you. The only thing that matters is you and your opinion. Don't buy a bow based on an internet review. Go down to your local pro shop, ask them to see a Mathews Halon 32, pick it up, shoot it, see if it's right for you. And that's the only criteria you should ever use for buying a bow. So with that said, thank you for watching the review. Thank you for visiting Bowsite, and have an absolutely safe and terrific hunting season.